Hey guys, it's Asus McDonald here. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't yet, subscribe because we are going to push out valuable content, as you guys know, around business marketing and around entrepreneurship. Today, my special guest is Camille Trent. Camille, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, for those who don't know Camille, Camille Trent is the managing editor at MarketerHire, a copywriter and marketing nerd. She's passionate about helping freelancers and creatives recognize their value and get the knowledge they need to win long term. When she's not writing, she's hanging out with her pup and two favorite redheads, or she's trying to coach the Portland Trail Blazers to victory from her couch.
Unsuccessfully.
Unsuccessfully. So let's talk a little bit about Portland Trail Blazers, So one thing for those that are listening or viewing this, depending what you guys want to do, is I've met Camille through LinkedIn and I've just been following her content, which is awesome. If you haven't, you guys definitely should check it out. And one of the things is what I liked was she was a Texan. And I was like, oh, I'm from San Antonio, born and raised. I'm now in San Jose, Silicon Valley area. And I love her style of writing. And it's really engaging in what she writes on LinkedIn. So I reached out to her, but I did not know you were a Trailblazer fan.
Or you wouldn't have reached out, right?
Or I would have never reached out. How did that happen?
So I'm from Portland, so that's how that happened. I went to some games growing up. My dad and his brothers all kind of lived in the same area, and they split tickets. They would all split season tickets, and so every once in a while we'd get to take a trip up to Portland, go to games. So I'm not sure what you're salty about. Maybe it's like the LA. I liked Aldridge. I liked him less when he was like, I'm too good for you guys and left.
And then he came to us because he said, I really want to win championships, so I'm going to go to San Antonio.
Pretty much. I get it. But then you have Dame that's just saying all the right things. He's like, I'm going to be here forever. I'm going to die here.
He's good. He's
good.
Underrated.
He's super underrated. He may never win a championship, but he'll always be my favorite player, probably all of Oregon's favorite person. Everyone seems to like him, all the players seem to like him as well. Everything I hear is he's a great leader too. So he just hasn't ever had, he's just always been the most talented. Besides LA, he's always been the most talented on the team, and so it's just not having anyone else. Every once in a while, CJ's just as good, right? He's different. It's really fun. It's really, really fun. Regardless, when we're healthy, which is not now, it is really fun. It's fun and frustrating because the perfect regular season team, and then just not ever built for the playoffs.
It's they burn out. They just burn out.
They burn out, but they've just also never had a deep defensive players, they've never had
you need that, especially a deep bench. You need a deep bench to go far in the playoffs.
Haven't ever had a deep bench or veterans. We haven't had a lot of really quality veterans in a while. And then our centers always break. We always have sort of fragile centers.
Well, you never know. There's still hope. There's still hope. Interesting fact. I didn't even know Damien was also a rapper that. I found out. Yeah. I thought it was a joke for a commercial, but then I started hearing more about it and I'm like, wow, this is actually real. I'm like, I wonder how much he gets from his side hustle unless it's a full-time gig.
I think between his Hulu sponsorships and him being one of the better paid NBA players, and and his rapping career, I think he's doing all right for himself.
And this is not a sponsorship, guys. We are not promoting anything about Damien or Hulu.
Sorry about that. A couple points.
No. So let's switch gears here. I want to ask you some questions. What inspired you to choose a career in copywriting? Like, why not a different career path, like social media marketing or PPC and SEO, right?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it was pure ignorance, right? Like I came into I came into college, or actually right before I came into college, I met with a counselor, and they were like, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but I like art and I like writing and I like business. Like
Yeah.
those are the words that I gave her to work with. Um and going more into that, like I knew that I wasn't super detail oriented, especially with design and with art. Like my sisters are, like I have a couple of sisters who are really talented in that department. And I liked the concepts, right? Like I liked coming up with the idea and like the concepts and like the deeper meaning. So I liked that about art class. With writing, I was writing songs like in high school, and then aside from that, yeah, mostly like goofy songs. But I was learning guitar, like played piano growing up, and so that was a good like creative outlet for me. And then I always liked English the best, like and I think this is an important thing, is kind of like finding something that you're really good at, but also something that you're passionate enough about. And so for me, like even though there were like signals all through growing up that I was better at math, like I always scored better in math, which is hilarious because I'm terrible at it now. But I always liked English better, and so or pretty much I always liked it better. And so I'd spend more time with it, and I had kind of writing as a creative outlet, and was still very like rough then. Like I think my English teacher told me that my best piece of writing, and he was like surprised by it. He was like, wow, this is really good. And it was like a stream of consciousness, like paper. So it's like, if that's any indication of like where I was like
Yeah.
at that point, it was like the best thing that I wrote was stream of consciousness. So anyway, so that's kind of some background. And then the business side of things, like I think I just liked the idea of being an entrepreneur someday or starting my own business. And I did little things like selling caramels, like to some people at our church. And then, I don't know, we lived kind of like in the middle of the woods. And so we would kind of like make up games. Like one day I was like, we're going to have an arcade and you're going to pay with like tickets. And that's what we're going to do today.
Nice.
Cause I was the oldest. And so we do that. And then we do some like music videos, like fake commercials and things like that. So very like creative, I think, out of like necessity, because we were just kind of like out in the woods. I could still see friends and stuff, and did that, but it wasn't like a next door neighbor type thing. So that's kind of some background. And then I get into college. They ask what I like to do, and sort of point me in the direction of advertising. They're like, oh, okay, well, creativity, but also kind of business, like advertising's like right, that intersection. And I was like, oh, like I love commercials. Like I just want to like write jingles, all day. Maybe that's what I can do.
Like,
and I
we've been
could be
doing
like
commercials in the woods already, so why
what?
not?
Oh yeah, exactly.
You're
I'm already doing it. I can hopefully have a little bit more budget for the production,
right.
and and really go places with that. And so anyways, yeah, so I'm thinking like Mad Men or like Hugh Grant from About a Boy, like that's what I'm gonna do. So I do, like I apply for the advertising program, and then within that, it was actually pretty well defined. Like we had people and professors that were from Ogilvy or from these big ad agencies, and a lot of the like alumni had gone there. So that was helpful. And from there, like you could apply to the creative track, like you could apply to copywriting, or you could apply to design. And so that was sort of a crossroads for me, because something I don't talk about very often is I almost did account planning, which is kind of like an old fashioned term now, but it's essentially like the role within a big advertising agency that really understands the customer, like whose job is to like do all of the research and like really understand like the customer and make like a strategic brief that they can present to the creative team. That's like, hey, this is kind of like the ballpark that we want to play in. Like this is sort of the big idea based on the insights that we got from the customer. Now let's turn it into something cool. So that's, you know, that's at like a very basic level what account planning is. And so I was a research TA, so almost nobody in my program liked data. You know what I mean? Liked the research, like analytical side.
Market
you know, they're
research type stuff.
yeah, they're like, this is boring, this is stupid. And I was like, really, like, guys, this is kind of fun. And so that was like one like clue to me of like, you know, I'm sort of opportunistic in that like, where are other people not playing, like where are people not where the open opportunities. And so so that was kind of interesting to me, is that I was like, oh, I like this and nobody else does, and I think it's important. And so so as my minor, like I actually did sociology, but again, it was one of those programs where like people didn't seem to care so much about like the research side. Like they liked kind of the the sociology side, like the psychology and like sociology, like learning like people and kind of like the concepts. And I liked all of that too, but I kind of wanted to get some hard skills like out of college too. And I knew that my degree was kind of like more of a soft degree. And so I learned a couple programs that were like SPSS and SAS, which are more academic programs, but they're just like statistical analysis programs and like basic things like p-value and you know, running like ANOVAs and t-tests. And so all of this to say that like I would help students as a TA. I would like help students put together surveys, and then we would be able to break down that data you know, by comparing like two different questions, like the answer to two different questions, and like and it's kind of making sense out of data. And so that part was fun. And basically I could have gone two different roads. And then I think it was partly because I felt like I was a little bit more creative than analytical. And now I'm realizing it's probably like a lot more. So it's probably the right path. But I also think I chose it because it was more competitive, like just like flat out, because you had to apply to that program. And I was like, I just want to apply to see if I could get in. You know what I mean? I was like, I just want to see if I could do it. And so,
totally.
Yeah. So I was like, I wish there was like a more confident answer that I could give you of like, you know, I saw the writing on the wall, I saw this like shooting star, and then I knew I had to do this. But it was more just
I like the experimenting though. I mean, you did a lot of experimenting, even when you're talking about you know, different softwares that you used in college, and it was all around, you know, human behaviors, right? And even now in marketing, it's still about human behaviors, psychology, right? What are attention grabbers? What's going to hook them? Everything's around marketing. So it's cool. I was laughing in my head too, because when you were talking about at earlier age, you used to, you know, write songs, right? So I was thinking about writing lyrics for Dame Dollar, you know? So that's where
I should, you know, he does like a 4-bar Friday that I'm always like, maybe
I've heard about that.
That.
You should.
Go look at his
Instagram.
Yeah, I'll cross post it on Instagram and LinkedIn. We'll see what happens.
That's awesome.
No, I don't know if I'm to that level. But yeah, no, you know, it's really weird looking back at it. I was thinking about right before this interview. I was like, I guess I was like trying to be a marketer without totally realizing like, I don't know how it all fit together. I've thought about this multiple times since, but you know, I didn't necessarily think too much about going into business school, like at least not at the beginning. And I kind of, there's sometimes that I wish that I had to learn things like Excel. That's really it. Like I like to learn like Excel well, would have been nice, but everything else, like I think that I was able to like create myself, like by kind of piecing together my degree the way that I did. And then, you know, you just learn on the job too. Right. And so I think even in college, like, I mean, we got to work on real accounts for for like Habitat for Humanity and like Taco Bell, like real accounts.
Nice.
And so
Yeah.
So I think having that mindset of like a sociologist, of like how do people behave like as a group, and then people say psychology a lot too, which I didn't delve as much into, but like on the personal side, how are we thinking through things? But I remember when I would work on projects, like I would try to like buy the product or like interact with the product in some way, to try and like learn like by osmosis, or just like learn, just think like the customer. Like I always say, like method marketing, right? Like the idea of like method acting, like
It's
you have to sort of get into the groove of it.
Yeah. For websites, we call that user testing. You gotta go through the user experience and like test multiple things on the website, see issues that come up and fix them. So
Yeah,
it's
that's like a
interesting.
perfect example.
It's also a lot of experimenting, which is great, right? Because what you did was a lot of experimenting. It wasn't like it was just dropped on your lap and it was like, great, I'm going to be a copywriter. Like you had to experiment, like you were mentioning. I wasn't even noticing that I was trying to be a marketer in the moment. But I think that's the thing that helps people find their passion is experiment.
Yeah, I think there's kind of like two ways to go about it, and I wouldn't say there's like a right or wrong way, but
Hmm.
a lot of people say to like start broad because of that reason,
Hmm.
and then kind of like niche down like once you know what you like,
Right.
and then I feel like in a lot of ways that I did the opposite, right? Where I mean, in college, I guess I did learn various like skills. I just didn't know how to put them together,
Mm.
or know how they were all connected really.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like it was actually pretty specific in that, my degree was like meant for a specific role, right? It's like you're gonna go into this role, and it's
Right.
actually, and it should be at like a large creative agency. Like it was very like tailored in that way.
That makes sense.
And then from there, like I mean, what I've said is that I started out as a copywriter, and then after like 5 years, I like learned what that had to do with marketing, like what any of that had to do with marketing, which is kind of true because the first 3 years I just was doing like the creation. I was like never thinking about, like I was just creating assets essentially. Some of it went into like experiential type things and events, but a lot of it was just like straight up like here is the text, or here is the
Right.
website, and never having to worry about distributing that content or worrying about people seeing that content, because we would give it to a director of marketing or like a product marketer, or
Right.
manager, and they would do something with it, I think, and so that was a little bit frustrating to me because I didn't see like
You only saw a
the
piece of
fruits
the
of my
pie. You
labor.
didn't really see the whole thing.
Yeah, like you don't, and I've realized kind of since then that like it should be a loop, right? Like you should deliver something, you should learn from it, and then you
Hmm.
should do it better, right? Like, or you should know what type of content to go from there. Like it should be a
Right.
feedback loop. And without that, like I just think it's a little bit more inefficient.
Mm.
And
You're right.
I think it works for some people, but for me, like I kind of want to like be a little bit deeper like in it, and seeing like what happens, and then how
Right.
can we tweak that a little bit to make it better the next time. And so
You're
yeah.
totally right though, because I think a lot of marketing professionals, like they want that. They only know, hey, this is my little piece of the pie. I don't know how this affects sales. I don't know how this affects the sales team. I don't know how this affects our bottom line. Like, I don't know how this affects the company as a whole. And am I really making an impact on the company, or am I just knocking out tasks? Right. So I do think a lot of companies, and it starts with leadership, top down, needs to include marketing more in their meetings and help educate marketing professionals and vice versa on what the whole picture looks like, right? What are our quarterly sales goals, right? Like, I think marketing professionals should be in those meetings
Yeah,
because
that's
we're
yeah,
all
I
looking
like that.
to achieve that at the end of the day, right? I mean, we're all working as if it's our own company in some way, shape, or form. I did have another question. So, as I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, you did mention about when you worked um, as a freelancer and for employers. So you had your own company for some time and then you work for employers. What are some valuable things that you learned as a freelancer that carried over into your current position?
Yeah, so I think it's communication that was like the number one thing, right? Like if you can communicate well, and you have to, right, in the freelance world, and that was essentially like my business was freelance copywriting and some consulting, and so yeah, so if you can communicate, and in kind of like two or three different areas where communicate what like the value of you just to start out with, like so basically do your own mini marketing like for for yourself, to be able to attract and kind of like close clients that way, and then like the day-to-day communication of here's what I'm doing, here's when I'm going to deliver it, and then like the final delivery maybe too, if that's a presentation, or if there's feedback that comes from that, like being able to communicate and collaborate, which is I think also something that I learned in the agency world, and in-house, to some degree, like learned how to work with different departments or different personality types. And so once you're kind of forced to over communicate, which you are when you're working like remotely, for one, and then when you're working as a contractor, right? So that's kind of like the main thing I think that carried over into what I'm doing now, which is also remote. Like everyone on the team is remote, and now and literally everybody is working remote now. And so that was sort of not fortunate, but that was I'm glad that I developed that skill earlier on.
Right.
And so that's one thing. And then I think the other thing with sort of having my own side businesses, essentially, was just learning sort of business, right? Like thinking about finance a little bit, and thinking about just the whole thing like as one, like instead of like I'm just a cog in the machine. It's kind of like you said, right? Like learn who to talk to, like learn when to talk to sales, like when to talk to the C-suite, when to talk to like operations and stuff. Right. So I had worked with a COO like directly under him for about a year, and that was really helpful just to see things like through his eyes and like anticipate the types of questions that he would ask. And so yeah, I think the collection of different experiences has just helped me work with different types of people. So mainly different roles, right? Like what does the product marketer care about? What does the operations person care about? What does the CEO care about? So
I personally love professionals that have used to be a freelancer or run their own business, and then for certain reasons go back to corporate. And I'm the ones like, okay, I need to hire them if I wasn't running my own business, right? And one of the things that I've seen, and I call it more of a, I don't know, personality or character, which makes you a great asset to any company you work for, is there's a sense of ownership that you carry because you had to learn that when you ran your own company or when you're a freelancer. So there's ownership, there's customer service, there's support, there's all this stuff where relationally how to go above and beyond for the customer. So there's that on top of what you just said about communication. So to me, I'm like, yeah, they're going to treat my money like it's their money. I trust that. And I don't have to micromanage. I don't even want to micromanage, but I'm just saying like that is valuable for anyone that comes from that kind of background. So I appreciate you share that because there's valuable points that you made.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think you can either get it by freelancing, starting your own business, or just working in a small business, because like a really small business is not going to give you very much budget. And so, or they're going to say that they're going to just say, if this was your money, which I've been asked before, would you spend it on this? And so once you start thinking about things that way, it can be a good and bad thing, because you can be like too hesitant, to spend. But I think in general, it's a good thing.
Now, did you ever feel disadvantaged in your advancement as a woman?
So this is a good question. I think I think the main thing for me was not always asking what I wanted, like not always asking for what I wanted. And it's sort of, it might have to do with being a woman, but I think it's also there's a personality thing of like, I kind of wanted to earn it, or like
Mm.
feel like I was earning it, and like always kind of had imposter syndrome that way. But there was kind of there was a couple turning points that were really helpful for me. So one was in the first agency, um, yeah, at one of the first agencies that I worked in, a friend had told me, a friend who also worked at an agency had told me about, being promised like this position for like years and years and years, that she was going to get like creative director. And then it never happened. And she kind of like saw the writing on the wall of like, I've been promised this for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not actually happening. And so she left, but she's kind of like regretted staying as long as she did. And so and so kind of like that was really early in my career. That was like 2 years in or something. And this was, a mentor of mine that I looked up to. And so, just kind of knowing that was like the reality in some cases of, that some bosses might like take advantage of the fact that, she's just going to like keep hanging on until, forever, or she would just quit. And then also like not getting like the raises that she deserved in the meantime. And they're just kind of hoping, that
Yeah.
she would kind of phase out, or that she just wouldn't put up a fight. And so I think like her sharing that, which is like really personal, was helpful for me. And then I interviewed at a place where they had me do a test project. And that's kind of a controversial subject, right? Like there's a lot of different posts on whether or not test projects are okay.
Yeah.
My thought on it is that I think they should all be paid, like for the most part. But if it's a short project, like if it's more of a thinky project, and not really an execution project, it's kind of the same as an interview, right? Like
Mm.
you would ask questions in an interview. And
Right.
so I'm actually like kind of pro project in general. I think it helps both sides. But for this particular one, it was like a short execution project. I did not get paid for it, but I'm glad that I did it, because in the interview, they asked what my salary expectation was. I told them, and they're like, well, we don't have the budget for that for this position. Would you be okay taking less? And I said no, because I already had a job that was okay. I just, this one was a little bit better. And so I did this test project, and did well on it. And so that gives you negotiation power,
Yeah.
and I didn't have to do anything. I just turned in the work, and then they said, oh, actually, like we found the money, like we can actually pay you that much. And so, so that was a good lesson. And also early on, this was probably again like two and a half like years
Mhm.
into my career of, oh, like, when you can prove, when you can prove it, or when you can like have leverage up your value in some way,
Yeah.
then that kind of like takes away the negotiation. Not that you don't have to do any negotiation, but I'd rather just like prove it in general. And
Mhm.
that's kind of like one way to do it. So that's why I'm kind of pro test projects, and then two, like just experimenting, kind of more like we we're talking about, experimenting in public, and doing your work in public. And so so that's why it's part of the reason like why I started posting on social and kind of like sharing what I know. And I think it's for two reasons: is that you can share what you know, and then other people know that you know stuff. And even though I wasn't looking for a job at the time, like that is partly how I got this job. And so so sometimes it opens up opportunities you don't know you want. And
Right.
then there's just the iterative process, right, where you put something out there, you see how it's received, and it's a feedback loop, and you take that information, and your next thing is better,
Mhm.
hopefully, or it's worse, and you learn something more from that. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like a long answer, in that I don't know specifically, but I don't feel like in my in with the jobs that I've had, that like I have been like taken advantage of. I think I think in general, like the advertising agency model is kind of broken in that writers like we're always like the worst paid, and that seems to be across the board when I've like talked to people about it. And I'm excited to see that sort of change, like people realize the value of writing and copywriting.
Right.
And so, you know, I do know that like that was underpaid, like at first, but I can't know specifically, you know, if it's how much I made compared to like the men that I worked with. And that's the thing is with without looking too much into like salary reports, like I never truly know, but I think that yeah, it's rough. And so I can't totally tell you, but I think yeah, the more that you can just work in public, talk to other women and like to just talk to other professionals and learn about like negotiating and what things to negotiate for and what's the most important thing to you. Like I will say that at all of the last like few companies that I worked for, especially when I was starting to freelance, I always asked, you know, like, is there flexibility here? Can I work from home? Can I work from home a few days a week? So that was always something that like came into the conversation, and the reason that I didn't take a lot of jobs, because I just didn't see the point of commuting. And a lot of like the Houston jobs that I didn't take were because I was not going to spend 3 hours a day in the car. And that's a whole conversation there, but I'm just very pro remote work. And that's what our company is and like promotes. And so
that's
awesome.
Partly
Partly why I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, all we need is a laptop and a mobile phone. That's all we need.
Yeah. Turns out we all work pretty well.
It's like, why do you need me in the office? Oh, to watch over me. Got it. Now, I appreciate you sharing. And yeah, everyone has a story. Some people haven't been affected by being taken advantage or aware or anything like that. So I just thought I ask, since it is a hot topic, right? And another thing that I've been seeing on LinkedIn recently, people are asking for recommendations on books around copywriting. What are some good books to read? Great recommendations. I wanted to ask, what are the top 3 books you are reading on copywriting?
Yeah. So, to be totally honest with you, I haven't read a book specifically on copywriting in a while. Like, I feel like after a certain point, I mean, I should, and I could go back, and I actually did ask my parents to give me a breakthrough advertising. So that was like one that I haven't read yet. So that one is in the queue.
Gotcha.
So that, but books that I read in college that were helpful and memorable, a couple that stand out were Made to Stick. That was a good one, just around the idea of like sticky ideas, you know, sticky concepts. I think that's like a core principle to copywriting. So that one's good. And then Hey Whipple, squeeze this, like you've heard, or squeeze this. That one is thrown around a lot, and that one is pretty good. I don't know if I remember it just because of the title, but I did read that. It
is catchy.
It's almost like a copywriter wrote it. It's strange. And then third one. So the other ones I was going to bring up is that there's a few like courses that I can plug that I think are just as useful.
Because I think people want to learn how to up their game on copywriting, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm saying is that I think books are helpful, and I think doing it is more helpful, right? And so, but you need to like, you know, be inputting stuff to output. Right. And so, so I found Eddie's course pretty helpful on copywriting. So very, very good copy plus, I guess, is his Patreon. And so I'd recommend that. He's been doing it for a long time and knows what he's doing. I've had a couple conversations with him. So nice. I like what he's building there. And then Joanna Wiebe, it's another like name that is talked about a lot. And so I finally like looked into her course and started going through that. And there's a lot of like value in that, how she takes a very like research research first approach in copywriting, and is very much, I think all the best copywriters are kind of in that mindset of,
Yeah, a lot of
deeply
research.
understand the consumer, do the research, like speak in their voice, and then assemble that together.
Mm,
Don't just kind of like spin something up that you think sounds good.
right.
So yeah, so those are the ones I would recommend or that come to mind.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Now, you currently working at MarketerHire. What does the company do? What differentiates them from other companies?
Yeah, so I think the main thing that differentiates us is it's marketers, like really good marketers that happen to freelance and not the other way around, right? Like not freelancers that are kind of like on the side, think that they're marketers,
Mm,
and are just going through a kind of lower, what I would call like a lower tier platform, like an all-in-one kind of freelancer platform. I think the thing that sets us apart is that we are specific into marketing. Like we're like, we don't do anything else. We're just going to be a network and a platform for top marketing talent. And so why this works, or why is there like a market need for this when,
hmm
people can advertise themselves now, and everything is online currently, is a couple things. So you have creators and marketers who like to execute, like that like to do the work, and they've either
Right.
been they're either like climbing this like corporate ladder or startup ladder, and hitting the point where it's like, okay, well, I can either go into like people management, or I can uh, do kind of like this like the overall like strategy work but not the execution, like, or I can work for myself, and I can go through a partner like MarketerHire, and they'll kind of help me fill my pipeline. So it's one of
Mm,
those things where once we vet you and make sure that you know what you're doing and have gotten results for clients before, then you're in the network, and we can give you opportunities, and it's kind of like Tinder, and it's like you can decide you can like swipe left or right on whether it's a good like opportunity for them. Like it has to be a
interesting.
good match for the client, it has to be a good match for
Right.
the freelancer, and neither of them, it's very flexible, and neither of them are locked into anything. So that's why it's beneficial for both, is on the freelancer side or
hmm
the marketer side, it's like really just helping them fill their pipeline, you know, because they might be advertising themselves, they might already have some referrals, but they probably still want more work. Like a
Mm,
lot of marketers still like
yeah, yeah.
want to be doing more,
Because
and
when
so.
I think about a freelance platform, I think of Upwork or Fiverr, right?
Mhm.
But you're right; they're very like specific. Like, let's just say copywriter. They're not like do everything that a marketer would do at a B2B company, for example, right? Social media,
Yeah.
promoting, doing all that stuff, right? But they have to constantly be hunting for like new deals, connects, whatever they call it, to get more and then bid and all that stuff. But what you're saying is MarketerHire does the opposite. They feed you where you don't
Yeah.
have to go hunting.
Yeah, exactly. So there's more value there. And then I think the other part is that we have a definition, I think you can say like, hey, I'm a web developer, like on Fiverr, but who's checking that? Like
Yeah.
the client maybe is checking it like after they've gone through like five that didn't work,
Right.
and so I think the difference is that we have a definition for like what we're looking for and what makes a good blank, like what
hmm
what makes a good content marketer, what makes a good Facebook ads marketer.
Right.
We have like specific qualifications for those things, and we have like
Interesting.
vetters,
Yeah.
so people that are in that and understand like those specialties to help interview and like vet them, and then we match them like with like companies. So if you have worked for a D2C beauty brand,
hmm
we're going to try and match you with someone that's worked on a
Yeah.
D2C like beauty brand, or at least like D2C. And so whereas there's a lot of possibilities. Like just because you're a marketer doesn't mean you're a good fit for a company, even if you're an amazing marketer, but you've worked for like an enterprise company, right, and you're trying to work for like a new startup, probably going to be a different need. And so,
absolutely.
So I think like we're kind of that in between that kind of makes it easier on both sides, set expectations and matches expectations. Yeah. And so I think it's that we're verticalized into one thing of just doing marketing, not trying to play in those other areas, but really trying to own marketing. And yeah, and we just basically know how to vet and interview and find these people, and match them better than
I like
anyone
that,
else.
because that takes a lot of the burden off the marketer.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Final question that I have for you, Camille, is
Sure.
do you have any advice or tips for entrepreneurs or marketing professionals that want to be better at copywriting?
Yeah. What was I thinking for this? I did have some stuff. Oh, I think it goes back to what I said before, right? It all starts with good communication. So I think if you want to be better at copywriting, then you start with just being a better communicator. So that could be at home, like that could be, talking, just how you talk to your family and to your significant other, how you talk to your coworkers on email, how you pitch something, so that could be internal of like, I'm really excited about this idea. I think that, we could double our revenue by next year if we do this, learning how to position ideas internally. And then externally, like this was one thing that helped, again, like in the agency world of having to pitch to clients of, I'm really excited about this idea. Like I can see the vision and I need you to be on board, like with the vision. So, so I think, it starts with, I say this all the time, but it starts with communication, and then you can level up by adding, sort of personality to it. Right. By like, and I don't think it's like that cut and dry of like, just like bare bones, like, and then add personality. Usually it's kind of like all mixed in at once, but I think that kind of comes with time in general, the problem people make is trying to overcomplicate content. Right. And so if you just simplify it of like, what am I trying to say? Like, what is the point that I'm trying to get across? If you can start with that and just say, this is what our product does. Like, this is what people actually care about that, like here's like the actual like value that it adds to them. And if I can just bring that up to the top of like, this is what you need to know. And I'll plug my friend's product. He just started Swipely, and so it's basically like a swipe file, right?
Yeah.
And but I liked how he's positioning it right now of basically organizing the internet's best ideas. I'm probably slaughtering that, but I remembered it, right, because like of the positioning of like, like Swipely is this way to organize the internet, essentially organize the best ideas from the internet. So so I think if you can figure out like what the value to the customer is from your product, and then from there also like make them feel that, and that's sort of like the personality, like emotional thing to it of like, okay, I'm communicating what we do and how it's helpful to you, but how do I show you instead, how do I like make you feel it, and I think that's how you level up. And I think where people get confused, even me at times, is when you sort of jump the gun and be like, I want to start getting like interesting and like clever and I want to overcomplicate it, when you don't actually know what you're talking about. So you have to start with knowing what you're talking about, understanding your product and your customer well enough.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate the advice and tips, and thank you for your time, Camille. And any last words?
Yeah, just if you have any questions, look me up on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And if you have any more questions about MarketerHire, I will likely be the person responding to you. So you can also find us on LinkedIn or check out our website too.